a choice. If I got to do it, you got to do it. I'll talk about this.
Can't see on there. Good evening. Well, it looks like the membership bulletin that's sent out every month is a benefit to see this many folks here this evening. And I want to encourage all of you to please make sure you're a member of the POA and renew your membership, because the cost of our bulletin, between printing of the bulletin and delivery, takes the majority of our funds for the POA, and that's paid for through our advertisers and our membership. So we encourage you to renew that and participate in our organization. And for new members, we started our bonus program where you'll get a bonus card. If you're a new member, there's 21 different businesses on here for discounts. And if there's anyone that would like to purchase a bonus card, we're selling them for $5. You use them maybe 3 times and you get your money back on the $5 cost of this bonus card. So we encourage you to take advantage of that also. There are businesses throughout the surrounding area, within the villages, and right around the proximity of them. Thank you.
Actually, just to add to what he said, if when you pay your dues, you make a donation of $5, we will send you one automatically. So there's lots of good things. Gilbert likes it because Dunkin' Donuts is on there. This is the part where I decided about a year ago that if we have any people that are district supervisors or officials, that we need to introduce them so you guys know who are the people that are doing the work in this community. So our secretary who read the minutes, Reb Benson, sits on the AAC board, Amenity Authority Committee. Dan Warren is on NSCUD, the group that controls our trash, our water, all the important things. Steve Lapp is the supervisor in District 7. I didn't forget you today, Steve. I know Mark Hayes is here. He's a supervisor in District 4. Did I miss anybody? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, my buddy. Jerry Ferlisi is on District 5, and I am a supervisor on District 4. Anybody else here? Did I miss anybody else? Okay. In the back, we have our friends from Suncool. We have our friends, Dr. Curtis's office, Seniors versus Crime, Realty Execs, One Trust. And by the way, when we pull raffle tickets for the cash raffle, save your tickets because One Trust is going to raffle 2 baskets off at the end of the evening. We'll put all the tickets that we use back bucket, so you'll all get a chance to win them. They're 2 nice baskets, and that's all we have back there. So with that being said, we have a shredding event coming up, which we do every year. It's at April 20th, New Covenant Methodist Church, behind Publix on 466. You need a ticket. You need to be current in your dues on the day of the event, April 20th. We have issued about 405 tickets so far. We're probably going to cut it off at somewhere between 900 and 950. So we're about halfway there. This is only the middle of January, so we still got 3 months to go. So if you have any intentions of getting a ticket, don't wait too long, because when we get to the end, we just stop. You have to send an email to the POA at POA4u@gmail.com. And also, if you're interested in volunteering, we're going to need lots of volunteers for this event. In the past 5 or 6 years, we've held this at the Wildwood Community Center. It wasn't available this year, so we were able to really get a place that's probably much better suited for us at the church. hopefully lots of you that are coming will come in your golf cart. And because it's golf cart accessible, and we won't have cars backed up all over the place. But if you volunteer, you automatically can bring your stuff. For working, we'll grind and shred all your things. So remember, time's going fast. We also had our first meeting south of 44 in January. We're now holding 4 meetings a year at Everglades Rec Center, one in January, one in April, one in July, and one in October on the first Thursday of every month. With the exception of this year in July, because July 4th is the first Thursday. So we had to take an alternate date, and it's July 18th. Really, really tough to get rooms in the villages now. So we did the best we could. Hopefully we'll have a lot of people. As you know, our meetings are video recorded. So if and when you have a question and it's question and answer, please wait for someone to bring you a mic so the people that are watching this and watch it at a later date can hear what is being said. Deb, do you want to say anything about Facebook?
Good evening. I'll ask the question I always do. How many of you are on Facebook? Good. How many of you have liked and followed the POA on Facebook? Bad. We're trying to share a lot of information with you on Facebook. All you have to do is in the search line at the top, put in POA of the Villages. It will take you to our Facebook page. You can like us, you can follow us, and then you will get notifications about meetings and other activities that are going on. We have a good following. We're up to about 2,200 people, and we are well over 4,000 bulletins now that are delivered electronically. So we're getting there, folks, but we need your help, please.
Thanks, Deb. For those of you that don't know, Deb is also the person that writes our bulletin. So she does all the good things you read in that bulletin. Next, you guys know what this is? It's a vial of life. How many have a vial of life? Wow. Not enough. Okay. This is put on by the Sumter County Sheriff's Department. The vial of life, what you do is there's this form. There's 2 pages. Second page asks for your medical information. You fill it out, you fold it up, you stick it in this vial of life. There are 2 green stickers. You put one on your front door and one on your refrigerator. And you put this vial of life with that information in one of the shelves in your door. Fire department comes, EMTs see the green sticker. They know you have a vial of life. They go to your refrigerator. They take it out, and you're going to save precious seconds, which probably is going to save somebody's life. We got lots of them in the back. Please feel free to take all you can for your friends, your neighbors, your spouse. We can get more. They got lots of them, and I've been doing this now for about 1.5 years or 2 years. We got a long way to go because there's more people moving in all the time. So with that being said, okay, on February 20th at Savannah Center at 1:30, there'll be another multimodal path discussion group. I really need lots of people, residents, to come to that and give us your input. One of the things that's going to be on the agenda of that meeting is whether we should do this on a regular basis, like quarterly, annually, monthly. We need to hear what the residents have to say, and think about our multimodal path groups. So it's important. If you have an hour or two, please attend it. It'll be a little article in our bulletin that's coming out in February about it. I was with district staff this afternoon, and we were going over the agenda for that. So hopefully there'll be a lot of people. Last time we had 65 people attend. And believe it or not, it was at Savannah Center. 12 of them were from south of Route 44. That was a long way. The date The date is February 20th, 1:30 at Savannah Center. Also, if you live in District 4, how many people here live in District 4? District 4 is having a town hall meeting on March 13th, 6 p.m. at Mulberry. You don't have to live in District 4 to come, but we would prefer that everybody that lives in District 4 comes and gives us their input as to what they would like to see us do, change, try to make better. We haven't done one of these in District 4 in at least 7 or 8 or 10 years. So we're going to try it again and see if we get a lot of people. Jerry, I need the tickets for the cash raffle. Please. Okay, just a second while he gets the tickets. We give away 3 $30 prizes. Sometimes we make money, sometimes we don't. We're probably going to make something tonight. I hope. You know, I should charge Gilbert for the donuts. If you, ma'am, you need a microphone, and I will get to it. When we have an open forum in 1 second, we will take that question. It's a great question. I just want everybody that's watching to be able to hear it. Okay. First number, I'm going to read the last 4. 3413. 3413. Somebody's got it. 3413. Otherwise, it goes to the president. All the way in the back. Gentleman in a purple shirt. Next one. 3543. 3543. Sir? 3416. 3416. The gentleman in the back again won again. As you can see, I am going to drop the 3 tickets back in there, so for the, when we draw for the basket, leave it here. Okay. With that being said, next on the agenda is the open forum, where we will entertain questions on any topic except if the speaker's going to talk about it. So, because we'll get those questions after his presentation. So if you have a topic that you would like to talk about or ask about, we will try and answer it. If we can't answer it, we'll get an answer for you. So, yes, ma'am.
My question is, how do you get the video of this program?
You go to our
at home?
Facebook page.
It's on your Facebook page?
It is.
Great, thank you.
And it's also on our website. And it will be posted on our website probably tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. As soon as I get the copy of it, I will send it to the person that downloads it onto our website. POAforus.org. And it's also on the last page of the bulletin. Yes.
Hi, the gentleman who came up and talked about membership, he said that a large part of the budget goes towards publishing a newsletter, is it? Can that be accomplished using email?
We have about 4,000 people that get it electronically.
That's all?
But
out of all the people?
that's all. We
And how
keep trying to get more people.
Okay. You keep
but
promoting it?
If they do or they don't, I will say this. If you were here last month, you heard me say this. The bulletin is the POA. And if we can't distribute a bulletin and give the people that live in the villages the information that they need, because they're all smart enough to make their own decisions, that's all we're trying to do.
Oh, no.
So the
I'm not saying to eliminate it, just
yeah,
if it's
and
being promoted.
just so you know, we've been here for 48 years, publishing a bulletin, and we will continue to be here for hopefully another 48. I won't probably be here, but I'm sure somebody will.
If I may, just another quick question. I don't know if it's on topic or not. Is there any indication people know what's going on?
I didn't hear you, sir.
Any indication of people talking about their lawns browning out and what the problem may be?
Yeah, they go dormant in the wintertime, and they turn green again in the spring. And for your information, if you want, you can shut your sprinkler system off in November and turn it back in March and save money, because you're not doing any good watering it in the wintertime. I've been here 21 years. My lawn gets green every March or April.
Yeah, keep seeing ads in the Sun about the shredding event, we need tickets. You said the same thing today, but in none of the ads does anyone explain what is a shredding event?
If you have documents you want to shred so people can't steal your identity, and you can watch it being shredded. It's shredded on site, in trucks. It goes away in little bits of confetti. Yeah. Well, it's free for members if you're a paid up member. Yes, it is.
Thank you. Cliff, I have two questions. How did we go from voting down the big increase in taxes last year for the fire department, the new fire department, to the establishment of a village's public safety department dependent district?
Okay, last year there was a referendum on the ballot to establish an independent fire district. They got voted down.
What's the difference between a dependent one and an
A
independent one?
An independent fire district has nobody watching over them.
Okay.
Okay, they can do most anything they want. A dependent fire district is appointed by the Board of County Commissioners. Originally, the 5 people that are serving on that board were appointed by the Board of County Commissioners. Board of County Commissioners also has final oversight of their budget. So when they turn their budget in July, the Board of County Commissioners either says yes or no. So there is a little bit more oversight, let's put it, than there would have been with an independent fire district. And let me say this, POA was against an independent fire district for one reason and one reason only. They didn't want to answer all the questions. They kept using 0.2 of 1 mil as to what they were going to charge you. And then, lo and behold, when the 2023-24 budget came out, it went up $14 million. That 0.2 of 1% would have never held up. It would have been 1%. You would have paid a lot more, and that's all we kept asking them, was to give us the actual factual figures. And nobody wanted to do that, so.
Well, the thing that disturbs me the most is they're going to have the power to, the right to levy, impose, collect, and enforce non-ad valorem special assessments. I see that as an open invitation for them to keep coming back for more money, more money.
It could be, but as I said a few seconds ago, that what they do and that budget they turn in has to be approved by Sumter County. And if it isn't, they got to go back. So I understand what you're saying, and believe me when I tell you that I know myself and a couple of other people that are sitting in this room that are wearing the same shirt I'm wearing will be at every one of these meetings watching what they do and hopefully keeping them where they're supposed to be. We have the best fire department in the state of Florida, okay? And they need money to operate, but they need to do it fairly. And the big issue with the independent fire district was the properties, commercial properties, were not paying their fair share.
Right, but then they went overboard. They went to letting them get away with paying almost nothing to propose that they really pay a lot. That's what got everybody upset. It bothers me that the same county supervisors that we're not entirely happy with selected these people and are going to have the oversight of them.
Yeah, and 2 of them are up for election in November.
Right, and
okay.
I don't
So
think they're
if
going to
you're
make it.
interested in being on the Dependent Fire Board, you need to file when filing time comes around and run for it. And then the other 3 will be up for election in 2026. So believe me, Nothing is perfect, but if you want to have the first-class fire department that we have to pay for that in some manner or form. The issue is, when you pay $125 for your rooftop, and the lofts of Brownwood for one whole building pays $125, that's not fair. And if they were paying what they should pay, your rate would be lower. So it's a process that we are going to continue to work on. We've been working on this now for, I think, 3 years, and don't intend to stop.
I just wanted to add that, yes, we will be at every meeting and we will be writing about it, but that board really needs to see all of you at the meeting. They need to see residents there. I went to the first meeting and they said they really wanted resident input. The next meeting on February the 7th is going to be very important because that's when I believe they're going to get the results of the study that they are having conducted to determine what the fire assessment fee should be. So that's going to be a very critical meeting, and I hope that residents will take the time because you all have way more power than we do when you show up in a room.
Thanks, Deb. And she's right. It is important. Please show up to that meeting. Hopefully it's at Savannah Center, and I believe it's at 1:30 on the 7th, which is the first Wednesday of February. We have to make sure that the rules that they make that are going to govern us are fair for everybody. That's what it's all about. So I hope that answers your question. Anybody else? Yeah, she did. Anybody else? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go into our, before we do our presentation, let me just say, next month, February, right here, we have Dr. Norman Anderson, who's a doctor with Robert Bozono Oncology Clinic. He's spoken many times here, and it's always a really funny and great presentation. In March, we have Cheryl Chestnut from the Villages Hospital, who was here last March and the March before, and we will compare what she says and ask questions about the promises that they tried to make last year, because we recorded the meeting and we have it all down where we can ask the same questions, and we'll be doing that. And in April, we have 2 meetings, one at Everglades where we're going to have Dr. Danielle Rozier from True Ear. We had her here about 1.5 years ago. We had about 250 people. She gave a great presentation, since so many of us in the villages have hearing problems. You'll find it, stop laughing. You'll find it, including me, you'll find it really, really entertaining. And in April, here we have someone from Edelman Financial, and unfortunately, I can't tell you anything about it because I don't know anything. I didn't make that contact. So with that being said, pardon? Dr. Edelman, April here. We have 2 in April, one in Everglades and one here. So now it's our speaker's time, Dr. Craig Curtis. I think you're going to find this presentation interesting. I'm asking you to hold the questions until he's done, because we need to put a mic so everybody can hear your question when he answers them. So and I have seen his presentation before, and I think you'll find it. Dr. Curtis, thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you, Clifton. Thank you, everyone, for having me. Okay, raise your hand if you've heard of Alzheimer's disease. Okay, so we've got a good baseline to start. A little bit about me. I'm originally from Ohio, and then thank you, sir. Spent 6 years in the Navy, mostly in Washington, D.C., and then, thank you, and then back to Ohio for medical school, and I came to Florida in 1996 to train at Florida Hospital. And while I was there, I found out that my true love in medicine was collecting spinal fluid at the time. So, but don't worry, that's not something we're going to talk about tonight. We don't need to do that anymore. And but I felt around that time we discovered that we could diagnose Alzheimer's disease with spinal fluid, and we'll kind of cover that here in a few minutes. But really glad to be here tonight. Thank you very much. And my only rule for the seminar is that everyone has to smile. Okay, if you want to stay. All right, good. So everyone can stay. And this is that me? Oh, okay. So this is the Alzheimer's disease timeline. It starts in 1850 with the birth of Auguste Dieter, and then she comes across Dr. Alzheimer in 1906. And that's when Dr. Alzheimer publishes his famous paper. Cliff said he sent that out to everyone to read ahead of time. So you're all familiar with it? Okay, very good. And and then nothing really happens in Alzheimer's disease for the next 80 years until 1984. Something very important happens. We actually discover what Dr. Alzheimer wrote about in 1906 and what we find in the brain, and we name it amyloid. So amyloid becomes a very important part of the story here tonight. And around that time in the 1980s, the theory was raised that, okay, if amyloid is what is in the brain causing damage, then if we can get rid of amyloid, will we slow the progression of Alzheimer's disease? Well, that theory was finally proven July 7th of 2023 when the world's first medicine that lowers amyloid in the brain slowed progression of Alzheimer's disease by around 27% or so. So last July, the FDA approved the world's first medicine that actually slows the progression of Alzheimer's disease, which is just an incredible moment in human history, if you ask me. A couple other things happen along the way. We see the spinal fluid in the mid-1990s. We see so when scientists were trying to figure out, well, how do you lower amyloid in the brain? How do you do that? They turned to mice, and they realized that they could use antibodies, that if they gave these mice antibodies to amyloid, that they could then use the immune system to get rid of amyloid. And kind of similar to how we get rid of polio in a way with an immunization. And so that occurred in 1999, and those were built upon over the past 23 years to lead to the world's first treatment that slows the progression of Alzheimer's disease. Also, an amyloid PET scan was invented in 2004 at the University of Pittsburgh, and that gave us a way to see amyloid in the brain through a scan. So we didn't need spinal fluid, we didn't need tissue or anything. That was a really, really big deal. And then in 2020, the world's first blood test to detect amyloid was cleared by the FDA. So now we're using a blood test to help us find amyloid in the blood. And we're going to go in depth on this over the next 3 hours. So by the time we leave here tonight, you guys will all be, oh, no, just kidding. We won't be here that long. So when we talk about dementia, though, dementia is an umbrella term. There are about 30 different types of dementia. Dementia simply means progressive memory loss to the point it impairs your daily functioning. Otherwise, the way I like to think about it is, would you leave that person at home alone? And so dementia, there are about, once again, 30 different kinds of dementia. Alzheimer's disease makes up around 60 to 80% of cases. But we also have other causes such as vascular disease, little tiny strokes that can cause dementia or memory problems. Lewy body. Has everyone in here heard of Robin Williams, the famous comedian? Well, he passed away of Lewy body dementia. Does everyone in here, do you know who Bruce Willis is, the famous actor? So Bruce Willis has another rare form called frontotemporal dementia. And if we look at all these different types of dementias in a pie chart, we can see that Alzheimer's disease makes up, it's the majority there, that bluish purple circle, and or part of the pie chart. So Alzheimer's disease is the most prevalent form of dementia, approximately 60 to 80% of cases. Risk factors for Alzheimer's disease. Well, age is the #1 risk factor. Right now in the United States, we have about 60 million people over the age of 65, And by 2050, we're going to have 90 million people over the age of 25. And Cliff just told me this morning that half of them are moving to the villages. So get ready. And so, and then genetics plays a large role as well in Alzheimer's disease. Yes, it runs in families. Approximately 70% of cases are related to genes, approximately 70%, but 30% have no relation to genetic history or to family history, etc. By the way, do you know how many baby boomers are turning 65 every day in the United States right now? 10,000 per day. 10,000 a day. And the baby boomers are going to end around 2030 or 2031, and then we'll start to slow down the rate of that growing population. You know what they call it, too? They call it the silver tsunami. Have you guys heard that? The big wave coming, the silver tsunami. So when we talk about the brain and we start to dive into Alzheimer's disease, let me tell you a few things about the brain. First of all, you have about 100 billion brain cells. 100 billion. If I held a grain of sand on my fingertip, you could fit about 100,000 brain cells in that little grain of sand. So we're about to talk about some really tiny things here in a few minutes. If I said to you, what's the first sign of Alzheimer's disease, what would you answer? Forgetfulness, exactly, memory loss. If I said to you, what's the first sign of Parkinson's disease, what would you say? A tremor, exactly. And if I said, what's the first sign of Lou Gehrig's disease, what would you say? Muscle weakness, exactly, sometimes voice weakness. Now, why is that? Well, Alzheimer's disease attacks initially a part of the brain called the hippocampus. It's kind of tiny up here. It's right there, that hippocampus structure. And that's the part of the brain involved in short-term memory consolidation. So a patient with mild Alzheimer's disease, they can remember what high school or people in their high school class, their graduating class, what car they drove, the vacations they took in the 80s, but they won't remember what they had for breakfast, because it's short-term memory that's affected first. People with Parkinson's disease tend to have a problem deep in the brain stem, so deep up in here, and that's the part of the brain involved in fine motor movement or fine motor control. And in Lou Gehrig's disease, we see the problem deep in the spinal cord, approximately down in this area in here. And those diseases we're going to talk about in a second have some very common related factors. So, but first, the story. On your left is Auguste Dieter. She's born in 1850 in Germany. She becomes a seamstress. She gets married. She has a daughter. And in her late 40s, in the late 1890s, she starts developing forgetfulness, short-term memory problems, some thinking problems, reasoning, language problems, behavioral issues. Her family thinks it's a psychiatric condition. So they take her to see the guy on the right. Does anyone know who that is? Did you say Teddy Roosevelt? Who said that? No, that's Dr. Alzheimer. Dr. Alzheimer. He's one of Germany's top psychiatrists. And Dr. Alzheimer admits Auguste Dieter to his hospital. He takes care of her for a couple of years while she declines, and then she gets a bedsore infection and she passes away at the age of 54. Dr. Alzheimer looks in her brain, and this is what he sees. On the left is a normal drawing of healthy brain cells with nice surrounding brain tissue. Remember how small these are. On the right is a drawing that is very similar to what Dr. Alzheimer published in 1906, showing these deposits. Up here I actually named them amyloid plaques, but he wrote about these plaques and tangles. The brain cells internally look tangled, and there were plaques surrounding the brain cells on the outside. So we have no idea what they are, and for the next 80 years, until 1984, essentially when patients develop this, we called these senile plaques if they happen to see these plaques in tissue, and we called that person potentially senile, or they had senility. and they ended up in a memory care unit or cared for at home until they passed away. And in 1984, when these plaques were discovered, when we actually named them and figured out where they came from, we started to learn a lot over the next few decades. And these plaques are made up of a normal substance. Amyloid is a normal substance in the brain. We need it. We couldn't live without it. But something happens to this amyloid, and it starts to misfold and clump together and form these deposits. Well, it turns out that other diseases such as Parkinson's and Lou Gehrig's disease are also made up of these clumps of these normal substances from the brain. In the case of Parkinson's, it's made up of a protein called alpha-synuclein, and which wasn't discovered until 1994. So this was 1984, alpha-synuclein 1994. And in Lou Gehrig's disease, it's a different protein called TDP43 that clumps together and forms these problems inside of brain cells. And that was discovered, TDP43 was discovered in 2006, so pretty recent. And there are other diseases that involve proteins that misfold and clump together and cause a problem. This has nothing to do with Alzheimer's disease. I want to be very clear to everybody here and everybody listening what I'm about to tell you next. But a simple cataract is a very similar process. You have a protein that holds up the structure of the lens of the eye, and it's called alpha-beta crystalline. And for some reason, that protein starts to clump together, misfold, form these deposits, which you can no longer see through because they're blocking your vision in the lens of your eye. And you go see your eye doctor, and they call those cataracts, and they can fix those by removing the lens and putting in a new lens. But that's another example of something clumping together in the body causing disease. Has nothing to do with Alzheimer's disease. Just making sure everybody knows that. And you know, heart disease is sort of a similar process. It involves cholesterol. We all know that by now. Cholesterol clumping together in the wrong place in the arteries around our heart, leading to narrowing of the blood vessels of our heart, leading to heart disease. No association necessarily with Alzheimer's disease, but I think that what I wanted you guys to know was that these protein misfolding disorders, these clumping disorders, have now become sort of the target, the focus of a lot of research around the world, and we're going after those. And the very first target to fall, of course, is Alzheimer's disease, and going after a protein called amyloid. But it also depends on where they clump together. Just briefly, Bruce Willis has frontotemporal dementia, the bottom one there, FTD, which is the protein TDP43 clumping together in his frontal and temporal part of the brain, especially on the left side, because that's where our language is controlled. And he has this disease they call aphasia, which is the initial disease that will lead to frontotemporal disorder or disease. And then Lou Gehrig's is the same protein, but it occurs in the spinal cord. So when it clumps together in the spinal cord, we can no longer get signals from the lower part of the body up to the brain, etc. So it depends on where they clump as well. So some of the same proteins can give us different diseases. Okay, so how do we diagnose Alzheimer's disease now that we know all of this? So we of course talk about symptoms and collect a medical history on what's happening and what kind of symptoms we're seeing, and we do a physical exam and collect blood and urine, really to rule out other problems that can give us dementias like severe liver disease or severe kidney disease that may make someone rather sick and not focus on or not remember very well. And then one of the most important things that has come along, though, is a PET scan for amyloid. Now, you may have heard of PET scans for cancer. Those are different types of PET scans. These are specific only to Alzheimer's disease. And here's an example of a PET scan. On your left is a normal scan, and on your right is a PET scan in someone that has amyloid in their brain and has Alzheimer's disease. So that shows up as the color doesn't really matter, but the color here represents, the red represents the buildup of amyloid around the brain. All right. Raise your hand if you've had a senior moment. Okay. If you didn't raise your hand, I assume you have a bad shoulder, and that's okay. You don't have to raise your hand. Do you want the good news or the bad news? Both. Okay, we'll start with the good news. Well, the good news is every single one of you should have raised your hand, because senior moments are totally normal. We all have senior moments. We all walk into the room and forget why we walked into the room. We all lose our keys or find them in a strange place. So they're absolutely normal to have senior moments, and it's okay. I don't want everyone to get nervous and freak out and feel like they need to come see me every time they forget something or have a senior moment. But the bad news is senior moments are also the first sign of Alzheimer's disease. So I do want everybody to come in and see me if they have senior moments. So we'll try to figure that one out over the next 20 minutes or so. But this is a really funny joke, and I laugh at it every time I see. So tomorrow at dinner, you can impress your friends by telling them you know what causes Alzheimer's disease, amyloid, and you'll be able to tell them you know what happened to the dinosaurs as well tomorrow night. So, oh, by the way, raise your hand if you've seen this movie. Did you know this? So I was updating my slides, and I Googled senior moment and to see if there were any new funny jokes out there for senior moments, and this popped up. William Shatner and Christopher Lloyd, the guy who was the scientist in Back to the Future, made this movie, and it came out in 2021. And maybe it hasn't been distributed yet, but no one seems to have seen this movie. But there's a movie floating around out there, and he's a retired NASA astronaut, and he loves his car more than life, and apparently he does some bad things in it, and it gets taken away. So then he lost his car, but then he finds a new love. So it's like a romantic comedy. So, okay. All right, I'll move on from that. So when we talk about senior moments and when does Alzheimer's begin, this is a very important question. And this slide up here sort of shows cognitive decline on the left and time on the bottom as time moves across as we get older across. And this shows normal aging. Everyone experiences slight cognitive changes during aging. So everyone should have senior moments. Everyone should have a little bit of memory loss as we age. That's perfectly normal. But who are the ones that we need to look at a little more, who are the ones that we need to look at more deeply? And so now we know this, and this is still hard for me to say because it's still something that we're grappling with as a scientific community. And it's this. We now know that amyloid starts building up about 2 decades before symptoms of memory loss begin due to Alzheimer's disease. So amyloid starts building up about 2 decades, 20 years before the first signs of memory loss begin. Now, you can look at that as something very terrible, or you can look at that as something very positive from a prevention point of view. And I'll go back to the sort of the heart disease and heart attack example. It would be a shame if your doctor couldn't help you until after you had the heart attack, right? That would be bad. It's great that your doctor can talk to you about cholesterol and lower your cholesterol and prevent. We know that by lowering your cholesterol, you reduce your chance of a heart attack or stroke, and you can delay it by many, many, many years. Alzheimer's disease is turning out to be very, very identical, which we're going after amyloid now before there are symptoms in prevention. And as a matter of fact, we're part of the world's largest prevention trial going on right now. The U.S. government is funding a very, very, very large trial. It's happening at 75 research centers around the country. It's being run through the NIH, Harvard University, and University of Southern California. And we're one of the centers working on that study. And this is what we're doing. We're finding people over the age of 55 that have no problems with their memory, or maybe very slight complaints of their memory. And then they come in and we draw their blood, and if their blood shows amyloid, we do a PET scan. And we don't call that Alzheimer's disease or Alzheimer's dementia, but if we find that, they're going into a study with that medicine that was recently approved by the FDA, to lower amyloid in their brain to hopefully prevent them from ever going on to develop the actual Alzheimer's dementia, if that makes sense. So prevention is now the hottest topic in all of Alzheimer's research around the world. And we think, many of us think that prevention is going to be the way to go. And it's very, 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 it's an exciting branch of research right now. Okay. That's how the medicines work. I won't really get into that. We can talk about that later if you want, but essentially these medicines are antibodies that bind the plaque that Dr. Alzheimer wrote about, and then we remove the plaque. Is prevention possible? We sort of already covered that. These are the prevention trials. The AHEAD study is the current prevention trial being funded heavily by NIH and coordinated by Harvard, USC, and Mass General. And these are a lot of the centers involved in it on the right, including right here in the villages. So prevention is something that we're really keen on and really want to pursue. So another joke. Do you guys feel that way? Are your brains full? All right, we'll cover one more topic then really quickly here. I won't keep you too late. So prevention. What can we do non-medicinally, or what are some options? So I'll focus on one thing tonight. Exercise is very important. We know that exercise increases blood flow to the brain. We want you to exercise approximately 30 minutes a day, about 4 days a week. That includes a brisk walk is probably the simplest form of exercise. Not a stroll. If you're out just sort of looking at the birds and strolling around, that is not that's not a walk that we consider exercise. We consider exercise to be to where you're huffing a little bit, to you're actually walking for 30 minutes and you feel like you're working. That's a very good indicator that you are getting enough exercise. So do that 4 days a week for 30 minutes. By the way, I can talk for about 4 hours, 5 hours on this. Of course, we won't tonight, exactly. But so if you have questions at the end or you want to talk more, we've got lots of options for you to talk a lot more about this. I feel like, I want to make sure I cover everything for you guys, but not keep you here too late. Stay socially active, keep your brain engaged, crossword puzzles, Sudoku, bingo, coming to events like this. I don't need to say too much about that because the fact that you guys are even here means you're engaged and you're getting out, so that's really good for the brain. If you don't use it, you lose it. And then the Mediterranean diet or the Greek islands, the Mediterranean diet. So what is the Mediterranean diet exactly? Well, it's lots of fresh fruits and vegetables, and olive oil is the primary source of fat, and beans and nuts, legumes, and fish and poultry. Very low amounts of red meat, unfortunately. And this is a tough diet to follow. So the Mediterranean diet was translated and converted into a diet called the MIND diet. And speaking of Harvard, this was developed at Harvard and Rush University in Chicago. And the MIND diet stands for Mediterranean Interventional Neurodegenerative Delay Diet. And it's essentially the Mediterranean diet for Americans. So otherwise we can have some good things, some fun things, and still follow this diet and get a lot of the benefits out of this. And I hate to call it a diet, it's more of a lifestyle. But they've proven many things by people that follow the MIND diet. And one of the greatest things is it doesn't matter when you start the MIND diet. You can start it at any age and still get the benefits. One of the benefits include improved cognitive testing, so you do better on memory tests if you follow this sort of lifestyle. And out of 21 meals a week, the great news is too, you don't have to convert all 21 meals a week to this Mediterranean type lifestyle. Even doing 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 has been shown to be very, very helpful. And in one big study, as a matter of fact, it was recently published out of Chicago about a year and a half ago. They showed that people that follow this actually had larger brain volume actually had larger brain volume. So there's a lot of wonderful things, and there are two things in this diet that we really we feel like, you know, if you say, well, what makes it work, or what seems to be the contributing factors? Two things: omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. You've probably heard of those. In fish oils have a lot of omega-3s and omega-6. And polyphenols, which are plant micronutrients that are heavy antioxidants, such as resveratrol and quercetin. Have you guys heard of those? Resveratrol is the red wine derivative that is very, very important as an antioxidant. So we believe strongly that that's where sort of the strength of the Mind diet or the Mediterranean diet comes from. Polyphenols. The polyphenols and the plant micronutrients are very, very important, and you get those in berries and herbs and spices, and you can actually get it in cocoa powder, nuts, flax seeds, vegetables, and these are very, very important for the brain and very, very important for overall improved health. So I think I can cover more of that, but I think that's probably a pretty good start. And are we allowed to take questions, Cliff? Because wonderful, because questions to me are some of the best parts, and I didn't cover everything tonight, but I wanted to give you guys a really good sort of overview of where the brain is in 2024 and where we're sort of going in the future here.
Any serious side effects from the medication that's been used for doing away with the
100%, absolutely, the serious side effects. So the most important one is the way these medicines work is they're antibodies that bind amyloid, right? We have amyloid in the brain, we want to get rid of it. Amyloid has a bad habit, though, of sticking to the blood vessels. You have about 600 miles worth of blood vessels in the brain. They're like the little ones you see in your eye. And those blood vessels can hold a lot of amyloid. So when the medicine works and the immune system removes the amyloid from the brain, you can get a little bit of leaking. Most of the time it's fluid that leaks, not blood, but fluid that leaks. And we stop the medicine and it goes away, and we restart the medicine when that goes away. But we do worry about bleeds. The natural risk, or what we found so far is this. The natural risk of a brain bleed. So if I took 1,000 villagers and I followed them around for about a year, and they're not on any medicines per se, they're just approximately 1,000 villagers over the age of 70, about one of them is going to have a really severe brain bleed every year. That's the natural baseline risk. On these medicines, we see approximately 2 per 1,000. So it went from 1 to 1,000 to 2 per 1,000. So it's a serious risk. We talk about it, and that's a decision that if you're faced with Alzheimer's dementia, that's a decision that you and your family can make, and we talk a lot about that. And the good news is we tend to see a lot of these things on MRI first before they get bad, and that's why we do MRI monitoring while they're on this medicine, and that helps because we stop the medicine once again, and those leaks resolve, and the patient can restart on the medicine. And that so far is coming out to be around a 30% slowing, 27 to 30% slowing of the disease. So the way I like to look at it, it's like this, like fire. If we're in Alaska out in the woods and we start a fire, it's going to save our life. But if we're sitting right here with Cliff and I decide to pour some gasoline and light a fire, well, that fire's in the wrong place at the wrong time, being used for the wrong thing. So it's like that. So these medicines we have to watch, and they need to be given under the care of a doctor. And so in that case, we consider these medicines safe enough to be approved.
Okay, one over here.
Yes, sir.
Doctor, thank you for your presentation.
Welcome.
Coincidentally, there was a 60 Minutes presentation on Sunday about a doctor at WVU, West Virginia University, who's doing some research on sonically smashing these plaques in the brain, and it's research. Are you familiar with this, and could you comment on that?
Sure can. So I sat in the second row when he presented that data in November at one of our international meetings. So what he's using is the big problem, again, are the blood vessels. We want to get the medicine into the brain. The blood vessels don't want that to happen. They prefer to keep things out of the brain. So ultrasound can loosen up those connections between the cells in the blood vessels and allow things through. So he gave concentrated ultrasound, which opened up what we call the blood-brain barrier and allowed the medicine to pass through. So he was able to get significantly higher concentrations of medicine into the brain. And he used one of the medicines that was recently FDA approved. Really exciting research, especially when you consider that can be used in other diseases, such as potentially Parkinson's disease and other brain diseases as well, and including brain tumors. It's a big deal right now. It's really challenging to get these medicines to brain tumors because, once again, the brain doesn't want to let chemotherapy in. So that's going to be an exciting, that's exciting research.
Over here.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Chris, thanks for coming tonight, and I want to say go.
Thank you. Go Navy.
You spoke about the village's research going on now. Elaborate on that, and how does one get involved in that?
Absolutely. Great question. So here you can take a picture of this, and we can send you the slides, by the way. If anyone wants these slides, we'll email them to you. And you can call my office. You can go to my website up there, craigcurtismd.com, or you can take a picture here, and this QR code will take you to our website. And you can just leave a message there, and we'll contact you. And then my table in the back, I have some, look at all those wonderful people smiling back there in the back, including Dr. Clenow and the team. And they're happy to take your name and number if you're interested in getting involved. And that is a great across different tracers. There are many tracers. And it essentially sounds like a negative scan, but maybe we should talk more, because I hate to give you the wrong answer here, right? And that would lead you off to do something.
But
so
I was told too that there is about 2% brain deterioration, that there is no amyloid, but it's just normal brain deterioration.
Then if it was in centiloids and they told you 5.4 centiloids, yes, we generally consider a positive scan over 20, but that number is moving up and down too a little bit.
Over here.
It's okay. Let him go.
Are you familiar with charter research right here in the villages?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And
I was in that study.
And they do good work.
Yeah.
Yes, they do good work. We need all the research we can get in the country. Every year, research has the ability to accept 25,000 patients, but we only end up with about 6,000 to 7,000. So we're way behind, which over decades really slows our research. It's the number one reason why this takes so long.
I was one of the first that got that drug, and
really,
and it worked.
Well, that's thank you for saying that. Yes, and we need all the research we can get. Yes, sir.
Again, thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for trying to put it down to a layman's term so that many of us can at least have a shot at understanding something to take home and either tell our wives or spouses or something about it. They're going to say you're crazy, and we'll go from there. But anyway, my question was, you mentioned about amyloid. I thought you said it starts to decline in certain ways, and we're helping with the pharmaceutical aspect of this. It's adding to it. Does that mean that potentially long term it might be a vaccine?
Yeah, I think the first part I didn't quite understand, but vaccine, yes. They're actively studying vaccines that potentially down the road you get one shot and it's a vaccine that stops you from or building up amyloid. And yes, the science is actively exploring those. Right now, these antibodies that you get, we call passive vaccination as opposed to active vaccination, which
so
is
it could be something similar to polio or some of those things.
That's right.
Okay. The second question is, in today's world, particularly in the pharmaceutical area now, is AI helping you a lot to help get through
AI
some
is
things?
the hottest topic in medicine right now. So far, it's not helping us in Alzheimer's, in sort of where the rubber meets the road, sort of how you and I are talking now, but it is helping us to look through what they call when they look for new medicines that might work. It's called medicinal chemistry, and they look at literally millions upon hundreds of millions of different structures of a pill or a medicine that might work. For example, we don't know why amyloid clumps. Imagine if you could just take a pill and it stops clumping. Well, you could potentially get rid of Alzheimer's, you can get rid of Parkinson's, you could get rid of Lou Gehrig's disease. So the search is on for things like that, and AI is really helping in medicinal chemistry, finding structures of molecules that might help.
Over here, please.
So just to be clear, I'm understanding I shouldn't be taking my omega-3s every day, 3 of those pills?
Well,
and what was the other? I forgot.
Okay. Okay. Yes, I want you to take omega-3, but I want you to follow what's recommended on the bottle. Okay? Don't take more. Don't think, well, if 2 is good, I'm going to take 6. Well, if 6 is good, I'm going to take 12. No, don't do that. Take whatever is recommended maximum on the bottle. Do not take more than what is recommended.
And so the other thing was salmon, sockeye. Which I don't really care for that much, but I've been eating it.
It is it's the fish with one of the highest levels of omega-3 and omega-6. So yes, salmon is a absolutely terrific source of dietary omega-3.
Over here now. I'm guessing that the amyloid is not something that shows up in your normal blood work that you might have done at your doctor periodically.
Great question, and that is correct. So there is a blood test now, and your doctor can order it. However, it's not paid for by Medicare yet. Medicare has said we're not ready to start paying for millions of Americans to get this because we can't pay for, or we're not going to pay yet for millions and millions of Americans to get these medicines.
Kind of short-sighted, huh?
Yeah, this is a 2-hour topic alone.
I'm sure. But you answered my second question.
We're waiting for Medicare. They're slowly coming on, but as mentioned earlier, the fire analogy, these medicines have to be used properly. They're great when used properly, but we need to make sure that the doctors, when they're ready to use this, that they know what they're doing, and that's the important thing.
Okay, I'm going to throw a monkey wrench into this room.
Please do.
What about a study on a person with Down syndrome? Are you familiar with that?
Very, very familiar. So Down syndrome is an extra chromosome 21, and that chromosome 21 actually carries the gene that makes amyloid. So they tend to have a little more amyloid, and that's something that we're actively studying right now. So yes.
So here it said that your first sign is that your your short-term memory is noticed that you can't remember. My circumstances with my son here is the opposite. He has forgotten everything from the past, but we can talk about today. Like we had a nice conversation about politics because everything's in the news there. So do you find people with Down syndrome aren't your typical like data?
Yes, we do. We don't know why. Some of the way the memory develops and the way the memories make connection to pull out memories, we don't quite understand, but they're different. And I'm not an expert in Down syndrome, so don't quote me, but I do know there are some differences.
Patient?
Well, I only do research in Alzheimer's disease specifically.
He was just diagnosed with an MRI, and it said similar to Alzheimer's.
Okay. Well, let's talk after this is over, and we'll chat.
Yeah, another one.
Thank you.
You're
another
welcome.
one back here.
Yes, in the back.
Exactly what type of doctor are you?
So
Research and, and what was your major?
You what? What was the second part of the question?
What was your major and exactly what type of doctor are you?
Okay, so So I went to regular medical school, like all doctors, and I'm technically board certified in family practice. I did my residency at Florida Hospital, but I've never worked in a clinic. I've been doing research for the whole time for the last 25 years. So I'm really more of a researcher type doctor, a clinical researcher is what they call us, clinical research, who specializes in Alzheimer's disease. Does that help? Okay.
Hi,
So I'm a real doctor. Yeah.
Hi, Dr. Curtis.
Yeah. Hi.
Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you for having
Can't
me.
be all bad. You're Navy. So,
Go Navy.
my question is, you talked about the Mediterranean diet, and you talked about the omegas and the fruits and vegetables. And there's an old saying in law school: anybody can sue, but collecting's another thing.
What?
Anybody can sue, but collecting's another thing.
Oh, good point.
My question is the balance of nature. We all know we don't get enough fruits and vegetables, and I'm not trying to get anybody in trouble, but do you feel that works, and is that getting us to a good space?
Great
Thank you.
question. Are you an attorney?
I do.
Oh, okay. My wife is, and she asks really good questions that are hard to answer. Okay. All right. I'm going to level with you. I want you to eat your fruits and vegetables and your beans, nuts, and legumes. And then you don't need to worry about taking anything out. I have a slide. It's from Harvard University. I'm not sure you can read it. But it essentially last August, Harvard Publishing, you can't read it, it's too small, I'm sorry, but if you Google Harvard and Harvard Medical School and supplements, brain supplements, they say don't buy into brain supplements. But the article goes on to say, if you eat a well-balanced and nutritious diet, you don't need brain supplements. But if you decide not to eat 3 pounds of vegetables a day, like most of us, then brain supplements are just fine. And then you can take omega-3, and you can take omega-6, and quercetin, and ginkgo, and turmeric, etc. So does that help? The answer is, I prefer you to eat these things, but if you choose not to, then take whatever it takes to sort of get your balance up of nutritious intake. Caloric intake. Okay. Yeah. Very diplomatic
I have another
answer.
one regard that you've mentioned over
Yes,
and
sir.
over again about the idea of short-term memory. The question for many of us probably is, what kinds of things should we do to find and test our... Now, when I go in to see the neurologist or somebody, they'll say, okay, I'm going to give you a word, and then at the end of this, I'm going to ask you to spell it backwards. That's one. And then the other part of that is that if you start to see certain things happening, what kind of doctor would you go to other than just your primary, or what would you suggest if you start to see these things are starting to fall off a little bit more than I think? In many cases, we can ask our spouse, and they'll tell us.
Yeah, very good question. And so short-term memory, so the problem with testing memory and saying you're fine or you're not fine is that there's a thing called cognitive reserve. So there are people who get really good scores on their tests despite having significant memory decline. These tests were invented in the 60s and the 70s. The most common one we used was invented in 1973 before we called people Alzheimer's disease for the most part. And so we recommend, I want you to come in and seeing your doctor is a great thing. But they're generally not in tune to someone's memory and whether or not they're having memory problems. So my advice is don't wait and get it checked out. Of course. You have to use the mic. So otherwise people at home can't hear you.
Wait, hold it. Brush your teeth with your left hand. Write with another hand. Just take simple things that you normally do in life, like brush your teeth. I'm all right-handed. He said, no, go to your left hand. The brain will start developing new ways to do it. You may be brushing your nose for a week, okay, but you'll get there.
Yeah, but that doesn't help you if you're losing. So the reason you're switching hands is because you're starting to lose some function in the right side maybe, or you're just starting to forget, or just to build up new things. Right. Okay, so that's okay, but don't do the one I've heard. Don't try to start walking backwards. That's the problem. No, seriously. I've had a patient come to me and said, my doctor told me to, brush with my left hand, brush my teeth, and do this, and start trying to write left-handed and walk backwards. Don't do that. Don't walk backwards. All the other ones are just fine.
Now, you've gone into a lot of the dementia and et cetera, but perhaps going through the various stages of dementia, I've seen it, and it gets very ugly at the end. So could you cover the various stages that a patient will go through?
Sure. Yes, sir. And generally, we talk about these stages. The very broad stroke is mild, moderate, and severe. And we usually have memory scores that sort of correspond. When you talk about a score out of 30 points, generally mild's going to be between 20 and 30. Moderate's going to be between 10 and 20, or 10 and 19, and then severe is going to be between 1 and 9. And generally, as a patient hits the severe stage, they start to not eat as well. They start to become more socially isolated. They start to become more inactive. And so that leads to usually some malnutrition. And then the immune system doesn't work as well as it should, and infections usually set in, such as pneumonia or other things at very, very end stage. So that's generally, does that help answer your question, sir?
There's a lot of viciousness towards the end.
Yeah, so you're right. So the frontal lobe control, the reason Cliff doesn't stand up and knock me out right now is he has a frontal lobe that says, hey, that's not appropriate social behavior. So you're right. And we start to lose some of those social cues and the ability to control impulses as the frontal lobe deteriorates. So that is something that we see, and those things are very challenging for caregivers. And for everyone out there who's a caregiver or has been a caregiver, I commend you. And that is a tireless, incredibly important job that is never ending 24/7. And there's data out there from the Alzheimer's Association that says the caregiver sometimes passes away before the patient due to the stress of caregiving. So it's definitely something. You see why now we're being so aggressive to go after this disease, because there are some very, very, very sad endings to this disease.
Yes, change in subject here. The cost of the new drugs and the acceptance of by insurance companies. Could you address that, please?
Sure. So the new drugs are incredibly expensive. They're about $25,000 a year. So that's why we're waiting for Medicare. Hopefully soon, Medicare is going to start coming through to pay for some of those. So it looks like this year might be the year, by the end of the year, that Medicare starts, and they're going to have a very limited rollout. I think part of the issue is we're slowing the disease around 30% right now. We have medicines in research that are years advanced already. We're already considering the new ones to be old ones. In the world of research, we're looking at the next generation and even the next generation. So we're hoping for much more significant slowing. We don't know that yet. That's why we're studying those. So I don't know exactly what Medicare's thinking or what they're doing, but they're definitely dragging their feet. And it's not fair. I'll say that publicly and on the record. So
we have time for 2 more questions.
One over here now.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Yes, you mentioned brain health supplements. What about old-fashioned, ordinary multivitamins?
Wow, great question. Okay, here's my spiel on multivitamins. The U.S. government looked at 88 well-done, controlled studies and found no benefit to the standard multivitamin. So far, that's what it is. Now, does that mean I don't take a multivitamin every day? No, I do. So the research might be that they don't show an overall benefit, but maybe it's showing a benefit that we call subclinical, that maybe it's still doing things behind the scenes that are helpful for us. I tend to believe that that might be true. So the cost of a vitamin is very inexpensive. So I take a multivitamin every day. That's just my personal view. But according to the studies, they have not shown a medical benefit, 88 different studies that they reviewed in a meta-analysis. In reference to overall health, including brain health. So, and in brain health, we haven't shown that any of these supplements actually, they actually will stop Alzheimer's disease or slow down the progression of Alzheimer's disease or stop you from getting Alzheimer's disease. One fascinating study that did just come out, published about 2 weeks ago actually, was that there was a certain fatty acid that when it was when it was elevated in the blood, those patients tended to have lower amounts of amyloid. And it was a derivative of omega-3 called EPA. It was actually a metabolite of EPA. I actually have the study up here, and I discuss it with people that want to talk about it. But it was one of the first studies to show that. It was right here, published. This was the study published on October of 2023. Sorry, but this is it, and we can talk about it afterwards if you want to. I tell you guys, I will talk for 4 hours. So you just keep it coming. Cliff said 2 questions,
Last question right there.
We'll stay late. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Last question. Yeah.
I've been working with Charter Research.
Yes, sir.
And they did a study. I do have the gene that my mother and grandfather had.
Okay.
And they are trying to track me into a Eli Lilly program that may have a drug. I don't know if it's effective or not.
Yeah, so Lilly's one of the leaders right now. They have a medicine coming out later this year that seems to slow the disease by around 30 to 35%. So we're already looking, the current medicine's around 25 to 30, and now this newer one is around 30 to 35. So those are the advancements we're trying to make in these medicines. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to talk to you about it. I'm happy to spend time.
Okay. Dr. Curtis,
Sorry, Cliff.
thank you.
Thank you, Cliff.
This is a
I
great
appreciate it.
presentation.